Congress just told the Attorney General to stop enforcing NFA registration. Gun owners have been saying it for decades. The court said it in 1937. Congress said it again in July. And taxation, or by registration. And that decision might be the beginning of the end for nearly 100 years of federal gun control. We're talking about suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns, firearms that have required federal registration since 1934, but could now be fully deregulated within months. This isn't speculation or political theater. It's already happening. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time to do it. Things are moving fast, and what comes next could impact millions of gun owners across the country. These letters from Congress aren't just recommendations. They carry real weight and could force major changes inside the Department of Justice. In this video, I'll walk you through exactly what Congress is demanding, why it matters, and how the legal foundation for NFA registration may have just crumbled. The real turning point in all of this happened on July 4th, 2024, and almost nobody noticed it. In the middle of a 1,000-page federal spending bill, a short section labeled 70,436 quietly changed the entire future of the NFA without any big announcement or press conference. The long-standing $200 NFA tax stamp for suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns was reduced to zero. That $200 fee had stayed the same since 1934. For 90 years, it never moved an inch. If it had kept up with inflation, that tax would be almost $4,600 today. For decades, the government was essentially charging Americans the modern-day equivalent of nearly $5,000 just to own a firearm accessory or a short-barreled weapon, and the only justification was that it was part of a tax. Millions of gun owners paid it. More than 15 million tax stamps have been issued since the NFA was created, generating hundreds of millions of dollars while building a massive federal registry that tracked every legally owned suppressor and short-barreled firearm in the country. The ATF has been buried in this system. In 2023 alone, the agency processed around 2.5 million Form 4 applications, each one taking an average of 200 days to approve. Long wait times, fingerprinting, photo submissions, dealer involvement, and background checks. Everything revolved around enforcing a tax. But here's the part almost no one realized when that tax was eliminated. The entire legal justification for NFA registration depended on that tax existing. In 1937, the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory registration was constitutional only because it was tied to tax collection. The court made it clear that registration was a tool to enforce a revenue-raising measure, not a public safety rule. Now the tax is gone. There is nothing left to collect. And with that one change, the legal foundation that supported 90 years of federal registration requirements may have just vanished. The lawmakers behind Section 70,436 didn't just pass it and walk away. They made sure there was no confusion about what they meant. Right after the bill went through, they sent formal letters directly to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and they didn't sugarcoat a thing. These letters weren't friendly suggestions or vague legal notes. They were direct, firm instructions. Congress laid out exactly how the Department of Justice should respond to every single lawsuit currently challenging NFA registration. The message was loud and clear. Registration only made sense when there was a tax to enforce. Now that the tax is gone, registration has no legal ground to stand on. And here's what makes this even more powerful. Congress almost never steps into active legal battles like this. But this time, the letters came from serious players. We're talking about committee chairs and senior members who control agency, budgets, and have real oversight power. The same people who fund the DOJ and ATF just told them to stand down. Even more interesting, they didn't just offer their opinion, they brought receipts. The letter directly cites the 1937 Supreme Court case, Sinsky versus United States, the very ruling the government has leaned on for decades to justify mandatory firearm registration. Now Congress is flipping that case right back at them. They're saying, look, the Supreme Court already ruled on this 90 years ago. The only reason registration was allowed was because it helped collect a tax. That tax is now zero. So the registration requirement, it's done. gun. That puts the Department of Justice in a very tough spot. Either they follow Congress's clear intent and stop enforcing registration, or they dig in, go to court, and try to defend a position that directly contradicts what Congress just put in writing. Legal theory is one thing, but what's already happening in the courts is something else entirely. Right now, at least 8 major federal lawsuits are challenging different parts of the NFA registration system, and each one of them just got a major boost thanks to the recent move by Congress and the elimination of the tax. Gun Owners of America has filed what they're calling the big lawsuit that could break it all open. It's directly targeting the idea of requiring registration for items that no longer carry a tax. One of the most important battles is unfolding in the Fifth Circuit, which has shown a clear pattern of pushing back against federal gun regulations since the Bruin decision. A single ruling from this circuit could impact around 37 million Americans. And keep in mind, judges don't just look at arguments. They also look closely at what Congress has said and done. Now, there's a written letter from lawmakers saying that NFA registration no longer has a legal foundation. Some legal analysts are already warning that if just one appeals court agrees, it could wipe out over 8 million existing NFA registrations almost immediately. And going forward, millions more gun owners wouldn't have to register at all. This isn't just a legal shakeup. This has the potential to gut a massive part of the ATF's day-to-day operations. Right now, about 2,800 ATF employees are dedicated to handling NFA paperwork, processing background checks, and maintaining the registry. If these lawsuits win, that entire branch could suddenly become unnecessary. While the courts wrestle with the legal side of things, something strange is already playing out in the firearms market. Behind the scenes, gun stores and manufacturers are dealing with a wave of uncertainty that nobody's really talking about. In 2023, suppressor makers shipped over 2.6 million units, the highest number ever recorded. Every single one of those sales came with a $200 tax stamp and months of waiting for government approval. But now, with that tax stamp reduced to zero, those same manufacturers are sitting on inventory worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and no one knows what rules will apply even a month from now. Last year alone, suppressor sales brought in around $1.4 billion, and that's not even counting short-barreled rifles or shotguns, which are also tied to the same registration system. If the registration requirement disappears completely, experts say the market could easily triple in size within 2 years. That's because the biggest obstacle, the paperwork, the tax, the delay, would no longer exist. Right now, buying a suppressor means going through a long process. You have to find a dealer with a special license, fill out ATF Form 4, get fingerprinted, submit a photo, and then wait about 200 days for approval. And if you happen to move to another state while waiting, that can cause even more delays. But if registration goes away, all of that is gone. Buying a suppressor could become as simple as picking up a scope or sling. No red tape, no long waits, no tax. Some manufacturers aren't waiting to see how the courts rule. They're already ramping up production, expanding factory space, and hiring new workers. Everyone in the industry knows change is coming. The only question is how fast it will happen. And while the market shifts, there's still one core issue that isn't getting enough attention. The biggest argument in this entire situation might not be economic at all. It's constitutional, and that's what could decide everything. There's a Supreme Court case from way back in 1937 that's suddenly more relevant than ever. It's called Sinski versus United States. And even though it wasn't really about gun rights, it may be the case that ends federal gun registration as we know it. The main question in that case was simple. Can Congress use taxes as a way to control behavior? The court said, yes, Congress can place heavy taxes on certain items, and they can require people to register those items so they can enforce the tax. That's it. The only reason the registration was allowed was because it helped the government collect money. For nearly 9 decades, that ruling has been used to justify all kinds of federal regulations, including the National Firearms Act. But here's what matters now. The court never said registration was about public safety. It wasn't about crime prevention. It was only about collecting revenue. That was the entire legal foundation. Fast forward to today, and that foundation is gone. The tax is now zero. There's no revenue left to collect. So, by the Supreme Court's own logic in the case, requirement to register NFA items no longer has a constitutional leg to stand on. That's why some legal scholars are calling this a self-executing repeal. In simple terms, that means the law becomes unenforceable on its own without needing a new bill or a fresh court ruling. If the reason for the law disappears, so does the law itself. And the government can't suddenly change the story now. They can't claim this was about safety all along, because that was never the argument they made in court. It was always about the tax, and now that tax is gone. Some legal experts are even comparing this to the end of Prohibition. When the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th, all the enforcement laws tied to alcohol bans became invalid immediately. No lawsuits, no court battles, they just vanished. That's exactly the kind of moment we may be looking at right now with the NFA. Right now, the ATF is facing a serious identity crisis. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has over 5,000 employees and a yearly budget of $1.7 billion. A huge portion of that staff and funding exists for one main purpose: to enforce the National Firearms Act. That includes processing millions of forms, running hundreds of thousands of background checks, keeping a registry of every legally owned suppressor and short-barreled firearm in the country, and inspecting thousands of gun dealers each year. If NFA registration for suppressors, SBRs, and SBSs goes away, nearly 40% of the ATF's workload could disappear in an instant. And government agencies don't just shrink quietly. They push back. They protect their power. Even after Congress dropped the tax to zero, the ATF didn't back down. In fact, they sent internal guidance to their field agents, telling them to keep business as usual, keep processing the forms, keep enforcing the rules as if nothing changed. But the truth is, something did change. The legal foundation for their authority, the part that gave registration its constitutional weight, is gone now. Gun owners across the country are split. Some are still submitting paperwork just to play it safe. Others are saying no thanks, confident that the courts will back what Congress intended. The ATF is stuck in the middle. On one side, there's Congress telling them to stop. On the other, lawsuits piling up in federal court. And in between it all, the agency's own instinct to hold on to power. Their jobs and funding depend on it. But this moment is bigger than agency politics. This is shaping up to be the most important Second Amendment turning point in nearly 100 years. And what the Department of Justice does next could decide everything. Whether millions of Americans finally get back rights that were stripped away in 1934. Make sure you're subscribed to Weapons Law Advisor and have notifications turned on. And don't forget to hit like. Big updates are coming, and we'll break down exactly what they mean for you and your rights.